as a kid, you kind of had dreams, right? Every kid has dreams to be the next Messi or the next Ronaldo, or that was alive in me in terms of golf and what it meant. Could I be the big name? Don't get me wrong, it was difficult, I think, in terms of understanding what that meant to that dream, and if that dream was still something that could ever be achieved.
In this episode, I'm joined by Graham Quinn, Vice President of Product Management with Guidewire Software. We talk about his early years of playing golf, thinking that he'd become a professional, and then the reality hit home. He just simply wasn't good enough, unfortunately. He went on to have an incredible career in engineering leadership, solutions architecture, professional services, and he goes through that whole journey of what he's learned from being a leader and then going back to education then as well. Hope you enjoy.
Again, another element I kind of brought to my career is that, especially the role I have now in terms of product management, it's like a mini CEO. You have to have visibility of all aspects of the product in terms of what it means to all facets of the business. And once you get the mechanics right and you can understand how to structure the code properly, it's, again, the limitless opportunity you can do with it. And what I have found is true focus, right? Focus on a business opportunity, focus on a use case within that business opportunity, and prove the technology can make it better. So they acquired that and molded a lot of that into the Snapchat device and their strategy for augmented reality, which is great to hear. It was early this year, went back to UCD after 20 years, so signed up to the Creativity, Innovation and Leadership Professional Diploma. Wow, did I learn a lot about myself. Empathy is, for me, is a true exponential success factor for true leadership.
So Graham, you grew up in a house full of women. Was it 4 girls? And you were the only.
It was.
You were the only son.
It was interesting trying to get into a single toilet when 4 women were living with you. Yeah, so 4 sisters, my mom, my dad, kind of in a district in Blanchardstown. Nice, happy family. I think I said this to you before. From a sporting perspective, played soccer, was no good at it. Played Gaelic football, no good at it. So decided on a sport that maximised my time outside the house, which was golf, right? So
and your dad played as well, did he?
He did, yeah. He got me introduced to it quite young, about 8 years old. Really loved it. Just threw all my time, my spare time into it. Loved the aspect of the skill that's needed for it, the interaction you get with people. Really enjoyed it and spent a lot of my free time playing golf as best I could. Had huge aspirations to try and be good at it as well, which wasn't too bad, but it was.
You're being humble now, I'd say. Specifically though, on that, right, on golf, how do you actually think the game of golf and those interactions with other people actually shaped you? Like when you look back with the beauty of hindsight. Yeah,
I think what happened was I became good that I actually played with the men at some point. So I went from the juveniles into the men. So I was, 13, 14 years of age playing with middle-aged men that, had well-established careers. And I think the way I looked at it was a great leveler, right? The fact that I was 14 and they were very mature in their career didn't really matter, right? For the 4.5 hours, we were all out playing golf, playing the course, and you have to hold a conversation. And I think that was one of the strengths I established from those early golf days that I enjoyed all those rounds. So yeah, different people, I think that was a keen. My dad put me out with different people all the time so I could get to meet as many people around the club as I could. And it's amazing what you hear in 4.5 hours from 3 relative strangers, right?
And you used to beat them then as well.
A little bit, yeah. Used to take a few quid off them all right at some point.
Love it. I want to talk a bit more about your dad actually, because he was a big inspiration, a big figure in your life, right? And he was an accountant, wasn't it, early on, and then he went on to be MD of
his dad,
an engineering business.
His dad was big in the construction world. A lot of the iconic 60s, 70s buildings around Dublin. He would have been involved in building. So my dad was like me, not very good with his hands, right? So more an intellect than a hands-on person. However, just yesterday I was doing loads of IKEA, so I'm getting better. But I think he was an accountant, great with numbers, very methodical, risk averse, and started as a clerk, moved as all the way up to managing director of an engineering business in Dublin and of a wider UK group, and very successful career, right? Really kind of inspirational in terms of his leadership of the team he had. He was always hands-on, got to know people really well, always admired his people style as well with his leadership style, and always looked up to him and said, yeah, like he gave me early advice about what to do in terms of, when it comes to third level education, like is the piece of paper worth more than somebody that's had a bit of experience, and that whole
experience
kind of debate
versus academic. Yeah,
absolutely. And he was definitely in the experience bucket, right? So that could have influenced early decisions for me personally, right? And in my university, I was keen to get it working, right? Where all my friends were going off to Australia and New Zealand, and I stayed at home and said, no, I'm going to get experience, So he was very influential in those early.
You worked with him, didn't you? Like during your summer holidays, and he took you under his wing. Like
he did, yeah. I think that was the benefit of being a small enough company. He could, and being the boss, he was able to introduce us to all facets of the business, right? So everything from answering the phone as a receptionist to cleaning the toilets to chasing people for money to working in the engineering ship floor as well, in terms of the floor, working on lathes and refurbishing valves and all that kind of hands-on stuff. So he gave us exposure to all aspects of the business. I think that's, again, another element I kind of brought to my career, is that, especially the role I have now in terms of product management, it's like a mini CEO. You have to have visibility of all aspects of the product in terms of what it means to all facets of the business. And I think that's a good foundation to have.
He lost his temper one time though, didn't he? What happened? What did you do? You and your curiosity with computers.
Yeah, I thought you forgot about that. Yeah. No. So yeah, I think one of my early kind of experiences with IT, and I think it was part of that curiosity I had as a kid, was kind of, what is this kind of, what are these computers? It was an old Xenix terminal system that they used to do their accounting processes, and I kind of was dabbling around in a menu and kind of going this, that, and the other. And his office was literally next door to where the terminal, the kind of mainframe was. And typical, are you sure you want to do this task? Oh, yeah. Are you sure? You're sure? Yeah, yeah. And then all of a sudden the dot matrix printer started to churn out, and then I can see my dad's head going around the corner going, what's after happening here?
Steam was visible coming out of the ears.
I did an end of year in June or July or whatever it was. So midway through the fiscal year, I did a full end of year. Back then it was very hard. There was no undo button, right? It was my first lesson in terms of the power and risk, right? In terms of what computers could bring. And I learned my lesson the hard way. He made me back enter all of that data. So it took me weeks after that to do that.
Oh, you make your bed.
Exactly.
Sticking with your dad, right? I'm going to go here. Describe how you felt the day when you realized, or that you were told, I guess, that professional golf potentially just weren't going to cut it. You weren't good enough. How did that make you feel?
I think, as a kid, you kind of had dreams, right? Every kid has dreams to be the next Messi or the next Ronaldo, and I work with a lot of kids through soccer at the minute. So that dream is always alive in a young kid. That was alive in me in terms of golf and what it meant. Could I be the big name, right? The Jack Nicklaus at the time. I wasn't Tiger. I was too old for that. But it was kind of always there in terms of what if, right? And selection of secondary subjects that I would make in terms of geography and maths and all that kind of stuff were all aligned towards, could it benefit that type of career? But nonetheless, the distance between it, I look back now, he's right. The difference between a single digit handicapper and a scratch golfer versus a scratch golfer and a professional golfer are massive, huge, big gaps. And a quite honest conversation by my dad to say, you might want to look at,
Plan B.
Yeah. And it was difficult. Don't get me wrong. It was difficult, I think, in terms of understanding what that meant to that dream, and if that dream was still something that could ever be achieved. But
what age were you then?
I would have been about 15, I'd say. Yeah.
But when you were told more or less you're not good enough.
Well, yes, pretty much like you need to look at plan B. Will you create a career from this? Will you You know, the opportunities out there are endless versus as a golfer, based on your current capabilities, you could be running a pro shop and teaching a 60-year-old how to cure their slice, right? That's the kind of the comparison. And it was a good question to ask anybody, right? To say, right, what is the future looking like? And I have a 16-year-old now, so I'm conscious of that conversation, right?
Sure, yeah.
So when I'm talking to Sam about what's next for him, he came to me saying, I want to be a barber. And I said, go do it. You know, go do it. Just great to have that level of clarity that he wanted to try something. Go do it. Give it a go. And I think that's probably part of that. You know, I relate back to that conversation with my dad. Maybe give him a bit of freedom to do what he wants, right? And make the mistakes, right? So.
But luckily at that time you were curious about computers. You're obviously into it. You know, that world excited you as well, right? So you just
yes,
cracked on.
I did, cracked on. I went to, was always handy with maths, really kind of took to it quite naturally and good with numbers, so a little bit kind of taken off from my dad in that regard. But I think, the endless opportunity for computers at the time. I myself and a buddy went to Griffith College, Dublin together, both shared that interest. He has a successful career in computers now as well. And we just, went with it, loved it. You know, coding became something of a dark art, but once you get the mechanics right and you can understand how to structure the code properly, it's, again, the limitless opportunity you can do with it. And got out working early, joined Microsoft Lotus quite early, and loved it. Building Windows NT and a lot of Windows 95 and localized locales across the world. So that was one of my first jobs, and it was great. I really, really enjoyed it.
And you continued that path though, isn't it? Like in relation to subject matter expert, and you seem to thrive on being, maybe the thought leader in a certain product and being the go-to. That you're clearly very comfortable being in the spotlight for expertise.
I kind of definitely, became that subject matter expert. Loved all things Microsoft related, Microsoft technology related, from Visual Basic to classic ASP into .NET, the whole trajectory of technology from Microsoft. It was really, really, in my wheelhouse. I became a bit of an expert in the Irish context in terms of a lot of that technology. Really loved my relationship with Microsoft as part of that. Had an opportunity to join them quite early. Didn't take it up. Stayed with an Indigenous Irish company and really enjoyed that. Set up some consulting practices. So that was the transition for me from that subject matter expert into more kind of customer facing consultant out there, building relationships with people, drawing on all that experience I had from the golf days.
Golf course, I was going to say.
And having those great kind of pre-sales conversations with those companies. It was really good.
From speaking to many leaders like yourself, like one of the common threads that I often see is that ability to influence boards and influence like a diverse set of stakeholders. And one standout piece of work that you did that resonated with me was when you were with Software One, I think it was. And that business, just for our readers and our listeners who wouldn't be too familiar with that business, how did your influence, or how did you go about that process of influencing them from a professional services consulting type of business to more of a product-led type of business?
So their model was two pieces. They had the professional services piece, and then they were one of the biggest resellers in the world of Oracle and Microsoft and those products. So kind of high volume, low margin type selling model. And then they had the professional services was a bit more profitable for them in terms of, consulting gigs, managed services, and all that kind of stuff. They never built their own product. They never had, and they were kind of going through a McKinsey model of transformation, right? Different horizons of transformation that they were trying to achieve. And the now CEO, Dieter, was part of that transformation effort. And they wanted to come up with a product that they could sell that kind of suited their business model, but then accelerated their opportunity with cloud. It was uncertain as to what it was, a little bit like what it was with IT Alliance and Exilion, right? It was still at the nucleus or at the early stages in terms of cloud and what it meant back in the Exilion days. Similarly, it was new for Software One. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what the opportunity was. And I came up with the genesis of an idea, pitched it to dealer, got some backing from a few of the execs. We were told to go to Zurich to kind of bottom that out a bit, expand it out a bit, see where it could go, look at existing IP that existed in the business, and mature that kind of hypotheses out. And we did, and we came up with PyraCloud as a product. Kind of in the run up to Christmas that year, I had about 6 weeks to pull together the business case, look for the funding, secured the funding, then had to hire 100 people over 6 months, which was near on, you know that, right? Near on impossible, right? In 3 different locations, so Poland and 2 different locations in Poland, one in Ireland. But it was an absolute blast. It was great. It was kind of really high tempo startup type within the kind of confines of a really kind of mature, stable multinational company as well. So yeah,
you backed yourself to do it though, and just the learnings on how you really because lots of people have good ideas and they spot opportunities, but that conviction and that dogged perseverance to get all of those people aligned is
yes, I think
some people struggle with that.
Yeah, I've a kind of, that's pretty much my role still today, right? That I've a great way to relate to people in terms of an idea I might have will only be as good as what they can add to that idea as well. That's the way I look at it. So I have an idea, it's great, I can get too emotional with it and go a certain direction. I need to have a bit of focus to say, right, these are the parameters that we need to fit within, but I definitely need other subject matter experts to contribute to it. And I love talking to people and giving their perspective and attaching it in and making it a better idea each time. And I think doing that with PyraCloud got more people attached into it, more stakeholders, more knowledge, and it became a more inclusive strategy that the business believed in, right? And
that's like a blueprint then that you've taken.
Yeah.
And you've repeated that then in Guidewire as well, right?
Repeated it in Guidewire, repeated it in Daiquiri, did it in Exilian in a small basis, really, because I think I have to shout out to Philip McGuire as well, who was the CEO of IT Alliance. Back then, he gave 5 people the freedom to go off and create a business case, understand what an innovative technology means, give them the psychological safety to say, you're released of your day-to-day pressure. Go be free and innovate and make mistakes and fail fast and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But come up with a business idea that makes sense to what we're doing and how we can transform and make advantage of this new emerging technology, which was cloud at the time. I think that was when it started. I kind of expanded on it in Software One, did the same in Daiquiri. Totally innovative technology, right? Augmented reality glasses, the software, everything we built ourselves.
That was a startup. That was an early stage business.
It was
early multinational to
exactly
consulting to startup.
It was. That was a big risk. Yeah. I think you and I talked about it, right? When was the last risk you made? I think that's probably one of the biggest ones where, I was enjoying, taking PyraCloud to market. We had 3,000 sellers globally. One of the last things I did was do a global tour. Went from everywhere. I went Barcelona, Delhi, Mexico, Chicago to do a kind of enablement workshop and talking to 1,600 people at a go in each of those regions to say, this is the new product we have, go sell it, go be energized on it. And to go from that then to, Daiquiri, total uncertainty in terms of what this technology can do. Endless again in terms of what I could do. A little bit back in me as a kid, right? And my dad's like, oh, this is exciting. What can we do? But what I have found is true focus, right? Focus on a business opportunity, focus on a use case within that business opportunity, and prove the technology can make it better, faster, cheaper. Once you do that, great, you're onto something. Then rinse and repeat into new use cases. And I think that's what we did in Daiquiri, right? Because again, augmented reality, you can use it for any, people put on the device, they get so excited about it. Oh, I could do it for this, and this, right? But as a business, we need to attach to something that will generate a new revenue line that's repeatable, right? And when you look at Daiquiri, ultimately we had to carve the assets off, fold down the business.
Just the market wasn't right.
I think we were 2 years too early. 2 years too early. Had some early kind of acquisition interest that the CEO at the time was not interested in. But yeah, I think if we could get through that 2-year window, and I think investors became a little bit impatient, I think, and wanted different from their investments, right? And but I'm delighted to say a lot of the tech, a lot of the patents, a lot of the innovation we created is alive today, right? It's in Snap with some of their devices that they're bringing to market.
That was like a clean and drop. They took elements of the business and then
Yeah, we had a
some
great
elements that were valuable.
We had a great innovation lab in Vienna, and they acquired a lot of that really like the all PhDs and the algorithm needs for computer
from
vision.
An IP perspective,
exactly,
yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
So they acquired that and molded a lot of that into the Snapchat, device and their strategy for augmented reality, which is great to hear. Right?
Yeah, lasting impact once again. Yeah. Talking a bit more about leadership now, right? So
yeah,
we can learn leadership from lots of different ways. You've already referenced a few ways, but one I wanted to go there with was soccer coaching. Like you've been doing that for 12 years. You've 2 kids, I have 2 kids, and I think I've learned more about a leader from trying to negotiate with my children than I have maybe with previous bosses, etc. But how do you think you've developed as a leader from those 12 years of coaching soccer?
I think there's 2 dimensions to it. There's a release valve for me individually, right? You know, the rat race day in, day out.
It's like a third place.
A Tuesday, a Tuesday and a Saturday are that safe haven to go, okay, it's a different side of the brain you're using. Some of it's similar. I'll go into that in a second, but that kind of release from is really cathartic, right? It's a way to rejuvenate, and there's a way to rest. I find it actually exciting going out and going, okay, Grant, I'm not thinking about work for the next 2 hours, right?
Sure,
it's just that safe haven, as you said. So that's one piece you get out of it. Second piece then is the skills you apply. You related to it a little bit there. Trying to get what we now have is 28 kids, which is crazy, but anyway, trying to get 28 kids to listen to you, engage with you always.
What ages are they? They're different ages, are they?
So I've done, this is the second team I'm on now. So the first team I did from, there were 7 all the way through to 16. And now I'm back again with my youngest, who's 10 now. So they're all 10 years old. And I forgot, like going all the way up with the other kids into teenagers. It's amazing. You get to know them as an extension of your family, right? The kids become really close to you. You know them really well. They look up to a coach through their early life, right? And so you feel like you're responsible for some element of their development too, right? So you need to set an example for them as well, right? So I see them go all the way up through their kind of early teenage years, and the grunts start to become more and more often, right? You get less dialogue, less excitement, right? So coming back to 10-year-olds, I forgot. I went, gee, God almighty, like they're kids again. They're full of all this kind of excited energy, a little bit like the puppy we just saw around the corner here, right? They kind of come up, play with me, right? And I think getting them structure, discipline, that type of stuff, I think there's a lot of elements in that I use for how I do my, conduct my professional life, that I might be planting in them, in their careers potentially too, right? So structuring training in a certain way, building that team spirit, making sure they look out for each other. Kids are very, quick at that age to, slag another player if they're not so good.
Sure.
Kind of saying, no, be inclusive. Everybody has their different skill levels. They all contribute something different to the situation, and trying to do that. I think that's an important kind of blueprint for how a good leader works as well.
100%. After 20 years away though, right, from formal education that you've touched on, what compelled you? It was earlier this year, wasn't it, to return to UCD?
It was early this year. I went back to UCD after 20 years. So I kind of alluded to it earlier on, right? So I kind of, when my dad was saying, give me the guy with the experience as opposed to education, I didn't emotionally commit towards my own degree. I think it was a case of trying to get through the motions, tick the box, get the piece of paper and get on and get it working. So I never really emotionally invested in it to the degree I should have. And I always look back at it, and what was the catalyst for it was my eldest son, Sam, where he said, I know we talked about barbering earlier on. He showed that, creativity, that he wants to do this himself. But nonetheless, I was there, okay, he's going to start talking about university. He has been. What will I do in university? And I went, you should look at this program. And then something flipped on my switch. Am I being genuine in this conversation? I didn't really emotionally attach to it. And then I'm telling my son to do it. Something just triggered with me, and I went, I don't feel genuine here.
Yeah.
I need to give it a go myself, see what the education system's like again, right? Because I've been so long out of it myself. And then give him a better piece of advice.
Okay. So you felt like a little bit like you weren't really, I suppose, leading by example, or you weren't actually practicing what you are preaching to your...
Exactly. So then I said, right, I'll give it a go. So not many people knew, and I went off and I said, okay, I signed up to something. And a good buddy of mine who's now working with me, Tony, recommended this course. He had done it. He said it was fantastic. Very aligned to, we both worked together before. I've been leading teams he'd been on, and he said it suits your leadership style down to the ground. You should give it a go. And I said, okay, good, I'll give it a go. So I signed up to the Creativity, Innovation and Leadership Professional Diploma. Wow, where it went, I've no idea. Like you read my post on LinkedIn recently. It's kind of, I went in with this, okay, let's see what the education system's like again. Let's be credible in that conversation with Sam, right? But wow, did I learn a lot about myself, right? And I think, how and what motivates me as a leader, whether or not I reflected on learning enough to take all the learning out, right? Sometimes you just go through experience and go, great, and then you're on to the next experience and you're on to the next experience. But did you truly reflect on the impact it had, both emotionally and growth perspective, on you? And one of the biggest tools I've got from this course and from going back to college has been reflection, the power of reflection. To keep a diary. Look back at certain situations and say, right, how did that make me feel in the moment? How did it, what would I do better? What would I do different? And try and document that and learn from it. And that reflection activity gives you more growth, I think, than just having an experience, right? That was one piece.
I've heard you I've heard you discuss previously, though, that one of the true, I suppose the true kind of key to great leadership is empathy, right? So you've spoke about this before. Can you give me a specific example? Like, we know what empathy is, but like from a, when did that really land, or when did you see that really working? Like, particularly in the corporate world, because it's sometimes considered a little bit fluffy. Sometimes it's considered a little bit box ticky, right? To be honest, right? And I'm really curious because I truly value it myself, and I'm wondering, did you learn the hard way with that? Is it just something you always had? Is that like, what can you share?
Yeah, I think definitely empathy is, for me, is a true exponential success factor for true leadership. And I think you can be over empathetic, right? I think in my scenario, I was empathetic towards a lot of external people, not empathetic to myself as much, right? So that's where that reflection piece came from. Did I give myself enough time to be self-empathetic, right? So I learned a lot from that exercise. I focused on everybody else. So that's one learning I had. I was over empathetic with everyone else and not myself. That's number one. And
what are the consequences of that, though? I don't really get it.
So if you're worried about everybody else and put yourself second all the time, you'll always never get around to developing what you want to develop, right? For example, going back to college, like, I just put the job first. I wanted to make sure I was progressing in my career. Did I put my own growth and development first? Never, really. It was always trying to get the next great product, really make the next big breakthrough for that company.
Lower down the priority list for you.
Always kicked down. Yeah. And, did I put myself first in that situation? Never. So that's where kind of one risk can come. The second one is kind of, I think we talked about this before. When you're overly empathetic, you can be naive in certain situations, right? And where you can not really shape or navigate that corporate competitive world, right? So we are all in this corporate competitive world. Everybody's out there to advance, to develop to the next level, right? Are they making all of those calls that they have in these meetings and discussions you have with them for the greater good of what you're empathetic towards, right? So we all have the shared vision. I'm empathetic to everyone else's role in achieving that. let's all go do it. But individually, it's a corporate competitive world. They're all trying to advance. Those two worlds sometimes collide, right?
Okay.
And, you know, I've been burnt in the past about that, right? You mentioned Software One, for example. There's certain situations in there that I could have navigated better, right? People in the company that had really influential relationships that I underestimated. And I think, again, in hindsight, read that situation a bit better, be sensitive towards it. Don't jump in, make a call, go a certain direction, feel you have the support, but do you truly have the support, right? And don't be afraid to ask that question.
Okay. But for other people that might find themselves in that, I think it's a little bit conflicting, though. Do you know what I mean? In relation to your values and your principles and how you might, is the advice, it's just a different type of awareness, is it? In how you, like,
Yeah.
let me ask this a different way. If you were to go back to that moment,
Yes.
like, what would you have actually done differently, though?
Yeah. I think I would have probed the individual and their objectives a bit more.
Okay.
As opposed to taking what they were saying as face value in terms of, yes, I'm here to support you in this situation. I have your back. We're on the right direction, blah, blah, blah. Did I underestimate that there was an around the scrum technique ongoing, right? That kind of naivety, I think we all have as maybe early leaders, right? We're all so energetic. We believe everybody's behind us.
Yeah.
That's not always the case, right? It's a competitive world out there. So just be cautious of those people. They're important to keep close to you, but don't, always probe in terms of their individual drivers and support them in the pursuit of those individual drivers as well, right? Don't be a blocker.
Okay.
Really be empathetic towards what they're trying to do to support you as well as support themselves individually.
Is true psychological safety possible in the corporate world?
Yeah, well, this was what I was going to choose for my project in the UCD course, right? I was really impressed with how quickly a new group of individuals could feel safe. And it was only the facilitators quickly saying, you're all safe. Whatever you say in here stays between us. Do we all sign up to that from a contract perspective? Yes, we do. Great. Something as simple as that gave everyone the freedom to be truly honest in every exchange. And I think that was where we were able to come up with really innovative ideas in some of our breakouts. So I attached to that and said psychological safety was the key barrier for it. And I can relate to it a little bit in terms of what I said about Exilion, right? So when Philip said, incubate yourself, lock yourself away in this lab and come up with this idea, that was an element of psychological safety he was trying to create, right? So I do agree it's a true enabler for innovation because you're going to have to fail. You're going to have to make mistakes. And you need to feel protected, incubated, insulated from the effects of that mistake or failure. But sometimes, again, in the corporate world, you're under pressure to hit, metrics. You're under pressure to stay within budget, to release things on time. And not every environment is supporting that psychological safety. I think in Guidewire, we're lucky, though. We have a good leader in Diego. I think he's trying to create that ecosystem where you can innovate and feel that, psychological safety. It's just difficult to be consistent across all teams. And in a global context is always very, very difficult to do. Psychological safety through innovation in a lab together. Like I just came from a workshop right now. It's the first time we've been in the same room in over 18 months. And it's great that we're whiteboarding, we're doing that, and that energy level that you get from that, and you can be truly creative is fantastic. So I think, we've missed that in the pandemic, right? And definitely.
What do you do as a leader, though, to protect but try and create, that psychological safety for the people that report into you? Like, is there any tips or advice or guidance for other aspiring leaders on how you've been successful at doing that?
I think I call it kind of having an air gap or, tackling the headwinds a little bit for the team. So being aware of the external pressure for those metrics and that success that's accountable across the business and being that conduit to say, yes, we're on track. Yes, we're kind of slightly behind on this one, but it's okay. We're learning because of this, and this failure. Mm-hmm. I think if you have a strong leader that's willing to be that deflector of the headwinds, the rest of the team feel that psychological safety that they can, okay, Graham has it. You know, the business knows what we're doing, you know, and we're on track. We have visibility across all the metrics in the business as well. That's okay. But yeah, I think a good, strong leader needs to really deflect those headwinds that would come in terms of expectation. And that's what I try to do on a daily basis.
So it's nearly cushioning the team and just kind of giving them, knowing that you've got their back,
Yes.
you know, in relation to that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Bringing it back to kind of your own personal self and your family and Vicky, isn't it? Vicky, your wife?
Vicky? Yeah.
Like something you said earlier, when you were going around traveling, and I was exhausted nearly listening to you when you were talking about your roadshow with Top of One, and like it was full on, right? Like that was a big commitment, and fair play to taking on and you know, owning it and going for it. And it's essential, isn't it, that face to face and
100%.
rallying those resellers and getting them really bought in and motivated to execute that new strategy for the business. But there are consequences, right? Home life, relationship, all that, you know, other really important stuff. Help me understand then how you as a leader manage that, and what are the consequences of something like that?
I think you've given the answer in the question. Like it comes down to a good, strong foundation at home, right, Vicky? Without her, I wouldn't have been able to give that dedication, that focus to the pursuit of creating that product, enabling that global team to try and understand what's needed, and ultimately achieving my professional goals, right? So, you know, Vicky's had a very successful career in the HSE. You know, when I look at what she's done, she did the true work, right? You know, working in oncology for so long.
Yeah, in St. Luke's, right?
In St. Luke's in Beaumont, working there for so long, treating so many amazing people, trying to get them on the path to recovery, and then, you know, grieving the people that didn't make it through because she had that personal relationship with them. Really difficult for her to do. I don't know how she did it.
Difficult, yeah.
And then, you know, at the same time, trying to support the family as I was off traveling around the globe, right? And I think, again,
Sam and Harry, what ages were they when you were?
They would have been the same age as your two now, yeah. So it would have been 6-7 years ago now. So like they would have been really young. So the sacrifice I made, I remember sitting on doing FaceTime calls with my youngest to read him a book. Loads of things like that. You find ways to navigate certain situations, but you miss the interaction. You miss, you know, I still miss the kids when I travel now, right? I find it difficult when I do travel, right? It's not the same. I know since the pandemic is over now, we're traveling. I'm heading off to the States again next week, for example. It's always difficult to go, no matter what age they are. But I think if you have a good backbone at home, and definitely have that in Vicky, and her supports are there as well, right? Her mom and dad are there to pick the kids up if she was doing something or she was working specifically late or whatever. And I think that whole infrastructure is really important for that. And we were lucky that we had everybody within, you know, stone's throw from where we were. Not everybody's that lucky, I know.
Yeah, no, fair play, but yeah, no, fair play. Like I just when you're saying it, it just resonates with me, just in my own challenges, my own life of that, you know. But we do have a tradition, right, on this podcast, right? So I want you to, I'm springing this one on you, sorry.
Nice.
I want you to think of someone else, like another guest that you think we should potentially invite on the podcast.
Wow.
So someone maybe that, you did reference someone in IT Alliance there, but you've obviously, I love that you've worked with some great Irish businesses, some great leaders that you've clearly...
There's one guy I think of.
Oh, great. He's straight
you
out
don't
there.
have to, I knew you were kind of filling the gap there. So I said,
I'll give you
no, there's one guy,
Garma
Creased. I don't know where you know him, but phenomenal trailblazer. Initially got introduced to him when, you know, we had mutual friends, and kind of got introduced and had a chat with him about what he was doing, and we had a shared interest in the whole world of architecture, right? So software architecture. At the time, it was kind of a bit of a dark art that, you know, somebody was a software developer and went to sleep and woke up the next morning and said, no, now I'm going to start building and designing the systems, not just building them, right? So what magic sleep did they have that night? What magic dust did they sprinkle on themselves to make them this architect? And there was no real foundation in terms of what the skills would be are needed for a good architect and what a good architect looked like. So he established some close relationship with the International Association of Software Architects, which are now, I think it's formal curriculum in the Irish Computing Society. And I became an early ambassador with him on that pursuit because I was doing architecture as I thought I was, right? And became part of the early kind of attendees to that training and kind of helping him mature it out. And so I got to know him from then, and I've constantly used him as a sounding board since then.
Okay, great.
We talked about the HSE. He's working with the HSE right now, and we know how difficult an environment that is to navigate with technology, right? And if Gar can't do it, I don't think anybody can, right? So there's a lot of people that I've kept in contact over the years, but Gar would be one that I would imagine you would spend the quickest hour of your life with and get so many valuable insights.
Great, thank you. Great. Nice. Well,
and I'll set up the intro if you want.
Yes, there we go. Putting on a green jersey for a minute, right? When you look at Ireland right now, you've worked for a mix of indigenous businesses, global international businesses. Like, where are we at quite a broad question here. So go answer it whichever way you wish to answer it. But like we're doing a lot of things really well. Like from an industry perspective, I think from what we see anyway, the ecosystem's really strong and it's really good. But where do you see it going, or where are the big opportunities, do you feel, from an Irish context right now in relation to tech in general or business?
I've constantly wore the green underpants, I call it, not the green jersey, because I don't want to be too patriotic with it. But when you're working for a global company, you're obviously trying to, explore the Irish opportunity, right? Sure. And kind of get investment into the local community, into the local economy, if you can, right? I think we have built, the best tech hub in Europe, right? I do believe that, it's no mistake all the big players are here, within a couple of square miles from here, right, for example. So I know we have the best skills, some of the best skills in Europe. I do think there's a huge pressure now in the macroeconomics, right? When you look at it, that a lot of companies are under pressure now for profitability. It's not so much about how many X of your revenue is based on your valuation. It's now a huge factor is your profitability piece. So I think with that tech hub we now have, it's an expensive market too, right? So the huge benefits Ireland used to enjoy of saying, if I was to hire one person in Silicon Valley, I could get 2 people in Ireland, I could get 3 people in Poland, I could get 4 people in India, whatever, those type of numbers, ratios. Yeah. There's still conversations ongoing now at that kind of top level investment, global investment strategy for a few companies that I've been involved in. And I think the gap between us, the more expensive our resources become, the less of it a pure money conversation it becomes. I think our true differentiator is the Irish attitude. It's the can-do attitude, right? Nothing's a problem. We like to have fun in what we're doing. That whole culture of crack and trying to get to know somebody and working hard, but enjoying yourself as you're doing it, and anything's possible. That whole ethos that we have as a culture, I think, shines through, right? And I've worked with a lot of different, nationalities and global teams, right? I think that's what shines through, is that if you have something to do that's uncertain in terms of what the outcome could be, uncertain in terms of what the skills it is we have to do, or we need to do this, I see Irish people based in those Irish teams thriving in that scenario of uncertainty.
Love it. Do you still have a pint with your dad every Friday?
I do. Look forward to it. And then I haven't had one in a couple of weeks. He's been in France for the last 2 weeks. He only came back on Sunday. So yeah, it's a ritual we created a long time ago. It's kind of, when he retired quite early, it was a chance for him to kind of stay connected to the corporate world and say, what's happening? What happened this week? Kind of keep his toe in and say, what did you do then? And so yeah, we go in without fail every Friday. We meet and I sip over a pint and he has a few.
He Do you download?
He does it, yeah. Do a
Both of you.
download, and he process, and I come back, and I'm a different man. If I went straight home, I'd say on a Friday without having that, I'd be big grumpy and in front of Vicky, and the kids. So
It's a lovely tradition, isn't it? Fair play to you keeping at it.
Yeah, it's great.
Because it's hard.
it's great. It is hard, and it's great to be anchored that way, right? That he does keep you anchored.
And he's so curious. It's great, isn't it? He's
Yes,
inquisitive.
yes,
Yeah.
And it's great to kind of give back a little bit to him, because I think a lot of the success I've enjoyed is down to his foundations he established, right? So, it's great to give back a little bit and say, look, I'm developing. I can't wait when, if I'm up for a promotion or whatever, and I get the joy in his face, and he goes, oh, Jesus, that's great. Brilliant. What's next? And you can see him lighten up. And I do love that in that exchange. It's great that I can join it still. And for how long, I don't know, but hopefully long enough.
I think you credit to him is what I believe. And I think the best is still yet to come for you. So Graham, thanks a million for taking the time today.
Thanks, Neil. Brilliant.
Cheers.